Good afternoon. The September 30th Select Budget Committee meeting will come back to order. It is 2:01 p.m. I'm Dan Strauss, chair of the committee. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Kettle.
Here.
Councilmember Moore.
Present.
Councilmember Morales.
Here.
Councilmember Rivera.
Present.
Councilmember Hollingsworth. Here. And Chair Strauss.
Present.
6 present.
Thank you. And I know Councilmember Wu had and was requested and received excusal for a couple minutes this afternoon as she was dealing with a personal matter. And we are going to roll right in. Parks Department, if you want to come on up. We've got our third item of business today, the Seattle Parks and Recreation and Metropolitan Parks District. Clerk, could you read the short title into the record?
Agenda item 3, Seattle Parks and Recreation and Metropolitan Parks District for briefing and discussion.
Wonderful. It is great to have you both, Superintendent Diaz and Michelle, back with us again. Director Eder of City Budget Office and Director Noble of Central Staff. I'm going to turn it over to you for introductions. Take it away with the presentation, and then we'll pass it right off to Councilmember Hollingsworth. And we have Council President Nelson in attendance as well.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, President Nelson and Chair Strauss and members of the committee. Thank you so much. My name is AP Diaz. I'm the superintendent of Seattle Parks and Recreation. I'm joined today by Deputy Superintendent Michelle Finnegan, who heads our policy and finance team, and you all know Mr. Dan Eder, who's heading the budget for the mayor's office. So it's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon and to talk to you about the proposed budget as it relates to Parks and Recreation. I want to thank the Budget Committee for the opportunity to present today, and we understand this is a challenging time financially for Seattle and that you have difficult decisions ahead. As we walk through the key changes to our Parks and Recreation budget today, I hope you will see the efforts made to address the city's general fund shortfall and overall pressures of escalating cost while aiming to preserve essential parks and recreation programs and services, which we all know and agree are vital to our community, to your individuated districts, and to the city's health and wellness as a whole. Today, we believe that public serving organizations work best when they are purpose-driven and guided by defining principles. And so SPR has adopted organizational affirmations to drive our strategic decisions and the work that we do and to help illuminate our communities to be the shining park and recreation system for all residents and visitors. As you know, our motto is Seattle Shines, and we are the shining system. Even on the dark and gray days in Seattle, the public loves and expects their parks to be thriving. And so we are focused around 3 missions. That's the development of healthy people, to build a thriving environment and to take care of our climate initiatives, and to really create vibrant community where people of all ages, whether you're a child, an adult, or a member of the aging population, can enjoy the benefits of parks and recreation. So these are front and centers as we helped develop our proposed budget and framed our budget priorities. And in fact, we're excited that we will still have significant resources to continue helping Seattle shine through programs and services such as Swim Seattle, our effort to reduce drownings within the city of Seattle, and especially disproportionately among people of color. We want to continue to advocate and advance that program. And we're also looking to lean into youth mental health, which I know is very important to the council, to the mayor's office, and we have, through funding, the ability to continue to lean into that system for our teens, for our youth, and also an exciting program out at Red Barn Ranch, which we're working to develop a program that will help close nature deficit and will also give children an opportunity to be able to enjoy nature in this nature-focused city. So a lot of things are coming our ways. With this in mind, you will find before you a people-first budget that preserves critical services, programming, and our incredibly talented staff. through a reprioritization of revenue streams while making thoughtful investments in mayor and city priorities. This high-level budget summary table shows you the breadth of our combined operating and capital resources across all of our funding sources, which include the general fund, the Metropolitan Park District, the Park Fund, REIT, and myriad of other capital funding. The other funds category includes Park District funding, and we'll discuss the Park District more in upcoming slides, but you will see how this flexible funding source is supporting the continuation of base recreational programs and services as originally envisioned during challenging budget times, something more traditional levies didn't provide. And we are extremely thankful that we have the ability to work with you all in utilizing our Park District funding for such times as this, when we are facing such a critical budget season ahead of us, that we will continue to focus and support core park and recreation services for our public, and the proposed budget meets that commitment. We would like to also tell you, and we'll talk more about the Metropolitan Park District funding coming ahead. Additional information, no, okay. Going on to the next slide. So I want to talk about the notable allocations in the budget and continue to center all of us on the fact that we are making notable allocations in the following areas. We are focusing on keeping parks safe and accessible in the entire city of Seattle and in all of your districts. That's really important. Especially after the pandemic, when we're welcoming so many people back to the parks. We have challenges that we have to address, and so our budget must focus primarily on keeping the parks safe and accessible. Without that, we can't do anything, and so that's our key objective and one of my key priorities. Second is supporting youth mental health issues. I think we all know the tragedies that many of our youth face today. And particularly in their teen years, when we see statistically that kids drop out of traditional recreation programs that parents often sign their kids and put them up for. And so we really need to make concerted efforts on how our teens are being served through parks and recreation. And then lastly, we all know the tragedies that we have faced as a city with teen shootings. Teen deaths and teens being exposed to violence on school campuses, near their schools, at their schools. And so we as a city, and we believe we have an obligation as Parks and Recreation to share as many resources and opportunities as possible for kids to find safe environments,
Superintendent.
late night programs. Yes, sir.
Apologies to interrupt. Could you pull the microphone a bit closer? You can hear yourself echo if it's working correctly.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you
There
hear
we
me
go.
now? Is
Yeah.
that better? Thank you.
You must be on
apologize for that.
Verizon.
What's that?
Bad jokes. Sorry, don't listen to me. Back to you, Superintendent.
So we'll be talking about how we're going to do that. And then we're also going to be talking about how we continuously lean into the Mayor's Downtown Activation Program to robustly activate our downtown, the core of our city, to make sure that we're continuing to prosper and continuing to come back stronger from the pandemic. And so we'll talk about some of those key objectives coming up. So I'd like to talk about one of the key investments that I was just talking about is supporting youth mental health, and talking about the investment strategy, which includes $15 million from the payroll expense tax funding in both 2025 and 2026 between the Department of Education and Early Learning, my colleagues who are behind me, and Seattle Parks and Recreation for youth mental health prevention, early prevention, and treatment. So for SPR, the budget includes $500,000 of one-time funding in 2025 to design and create and implement an online youth connector program. This platform will be for teens to improve mental health support and program awareness and reduce barriers to access. This investment is vital because it improves awareness, navigation, and access to Seattle youth programs, including career exploration, community service, education, Seattle mentors, recreational programming, scholarships and discounts, and mental health support. SPR will maintain the platform in out years using existing budget. And I really want to thank the mayor's office for this allocation specifically, because to my point earlier, you know, a lot of youth rely, when they're young kids, obviously the people that are doing the investigation and the signing up and the research and paying for the programs are parents. They're the ones that are involved. And as we all know, when you get to those teen years, teens are either don't want their parents involved in signing them up for programs. They want to be in charge of that. They want to make the decisions. And so we have to be strategic and understand that that's the way that our youth work. So we also know this is a fast age of technology, information learning, and traditional flyers or websites announcing all these great programs that the city has and that the money that we put into them, they mean nothing if people aren't accessing that information. So the youth platform hub design model is really unique and vital to have someone who strategically can work with our Office of Innovation programming in the mayor's office and really come up and create ways that teens can get accessible information. They speak to them in their quote unquote teen language, and that tell them and avail them and pique their interest, because we know that the best approach to getting teens involved is to have a variety of programming. Some things will resonate with some kids, some things will resonate with others. And so it's our job as electeds and department heads to expose them to as many opportunities as possible, not just sports, but arts, music, theater, all of the great things that can pique a kid's interest. So that's a big investment. There's also $600,000 of ongoing funding for programming and partnerships supporting youth mental health by providing opportunities for youth to access rural nature experiences at Red Barn Ranch. This is an SPR-owned property in rural King County in Auburn, and it's adjacent to some of our native tribal lands, and we're working with our partners to help them partner with us. This investment is a mayor priority with a goal to improve mental and physical health outcomes of Seattle and King County youth by connecting elementary, middle, and high school students with the outdoors. You can see some pictures of activations that we have started with some of our horse programs, just a snapshot of things that we're thinking about. This funding will support activities such as facilitated day and overnight trips by partners offering equine, community gardening, trail building, and environmental restoration programs designed to address the nature deficit experienced by today's young people, especially among youth in historically underserved communities. One thing that I've noticed in my time here is that, as you are all aware, those of you who have grown up here and lived here a long time, the majesty, the beauty of the Evergreen State and the Emerald City is this abundant nature that surrounds us, our mountains and our waterways and all of these great experiences. But what I have found is that there's still too many kids in Seattle that never visited Mount Rainier. They don't have the ability to go into the mountains and go skiing. They don't have the means or access or opportunities to go canoeing or go visit our islands, and things that we often take advantage and think that every person has opportunities because maybe we've had those opportunities or we've been fortunate enough to do those things. We still have to remember that there are too many kids in Seattle that have never availed themselves of the wonderful majesty of the state. And so taking advantage of a property that we own in Auburn and to develop it into something where we could take kids easily and get them into nature and teach them all the great things is an amazing program. And so I credit and thank the mayor for supporting that and prioritizing that in the budget. And so I just wanted to point that out. The next thing is investment to support the downtown activation program. Parks has been an integral part of the downtown activation planning committee and working with our other partners, whether it's the Office of Economic Development, arts, transportation, a variety of partners that are coming together to realize this vision. And One of them, announced in June 2023, continues to transform the downtown area as we're recovering from the impacts of COVID-19. Hopefully you all see and agree that our downtown is in a much healthier state than it was in years past. There's still a lot of work to do, and that's why we need concerted efforts to come together and come up with the type of investments, programmings, activation, economic development, and really having a big city approach to continue to deliver on this. So the proposed budget includes $1.3 million in 2025 and $2.3 million in 2026 to reimagine and revitalize Westlake Plaza, which could include the removal of the out-of-commission fountain, a stage renovation, and other needed upgrades to make the area safe and inviting. And so the reason why we're focusing on Westlake is not only is it the sort of the core of the downtown area, but we are lucky to have a plaza in our downtown area that has not been taken by large development. But there's a real opportunity there for us to set a stage and create a focal point that many cities have developed, plazas and squares downtown, and Seattle has the opportunity to do that. We also want to be ready for the World Cup. We also want to have the opportunity to offer this as a exploration destination, maybe some fun challenge zones during the World Cup watch parties. It'll also be the entree to the entry into Seattle Center with the monorail. And there's just a lot of opportunity here. And so this investment will allow us to continue to do that and stay focused on Westlake Plaza, which is owned by Seattle Parks and Recreation. Next, I'd like to talk about some of our general fund savings to sustain core programs and services while meeting reduced city general fund levels. The proposed budget, 1, utilizes Park District funding flexibility, and we'll talk about that in just a second. 2, enacts efficiencies in various parks and recreational programs, which is important to maintain the provision of the overall park and recreation programs that we will still be providing to community. And it supports a citywide graffiti abatement program, which I'll talk about, which is a program that will be coming to parks. So the general fund savings in the Park District flexibility. As I previously mentioned, the proposed budget utilizes our most flexible funding source. That's the Park District to support core programming and people. All of you as members of the City Council are the overseers and sit on the Park District Committee Fund. The primary changes include shifts in planned debt payments to align with current project schedules. That's about $2.5 million. And a one-time use of accrued Park District interest income, which is $2.4 million. And modifies a few of the Park District funded capital programs, which is about a $3.9 million. Changes to debt service reflect a one-year shift in planned bond funding for Green Lake Community Center, the Evans Pool renovation, and the 8th and Mercer City Community Center development. These adjustments are partially sustained by eliminating planned bond funding for facility decarbonization, assumed to begin in 2027. Please note the proposed budget also includes 2 budget-neutral realignments related to timing of community center projects. These one-time realignments shift resources identified for Lake City Community Center to the Soundview Athletic Field Conversion Project, $3.2 million of debt service and operating and maintenance, and from the Queen Anne City Community Project to the West End Queen Anne Playfield Conversion Project, which is about $1.3 million. These changes mitigate cost escalation and recognize there isn't sufficient REIT to address funding gaps in these conversion projects at this time. I do want to note that we are not doing the Lake City community renovations or the Queen Anne community renovations. It's just that based on the schedule and timing, those projects aren't at a stage where they were completely ready. So we're using that money to shore up some of the shortfalls now, but we'll talk about how we're going to continue those. So,
Not that the
but-
superintendent needs a translator. We are doing both of those projects. I just wanted to clear up the double negative.
Thank you. We are not doing those. We are doing those. Thank you, sir. The proposed budget also includes some ongoing changes to the capital program. Resources are shifted from our capital major maintenance and asset preservation program to support core department services previously funded by the general fund. About $2 million of this total reduction is ongoing, with $500,000 in reductions occurring only in 2025. As a result of this reduction, SPR will revise the scope and scale of our asset management major maintenance projects while prioritizing our critical assets like public restrooms, play areas, accessibility, etc. Resources are also shifted from the Parks Community Fund to the operating budget to support core services previously funded by the General Fund. The Community Fund, previously called the Major Projects Challenge Fund, was increased from $1.5 million to $2.5 million in 2023 as part of the Cycle 2 of the Park District, and this item removes that expansion. However, funding added for the 2 staff positions to engage with and support community engaged in capital improvement projects and processes are retained. We will still be doing the program, and we will still offer the ability for park community funding to occur, but we will need to make these decisions in order to preserve the overall program and the other needs. So we wanted to point that out. Finally, $440,000 is being shifted from our park acquisition program to the operating budget to support core department services previously funded by the general fund. The budget, however, retains $1 million annually to leverage acquisition grant opportunities and to support other low-cost priority acquisitions such as green space additions. So we're not out of that business, and we certainly will continue to keep eyes on those important acquisitions that allow for opportunities down the road. And we have about $1 million set aside to do that, but we need to make some adjustments. The other way that we're supporting the general fund is through park and recreation efficiencies. The proposed budget also makes some programmatic changes on the operating side. The proposed budget before you reduces baseline staffing for park maintenance by approximately 2.4% by abrogating 7 part-time laborers and 1 supported employment position that provides supplemental staffing during peak season. SPR believes there will be minimal impact on the overall maintenance, and SPR will endeavor to minimize impacts during peak seasons when these part-time positions would have supplemented year-round staff. There was a time when we were looking at even more cuts, and while cuts are never easy, in the overall general frame of the magnitude of all that we have to do, this is a way that we can continue to do those by abrogating some of our part-time positions and retaining as many of our full-time positions as possible. The budget removes 1 position and a non-labor funding for SPR to activate and program outdoor spaces outside the greater downtown area. This change returns funding for activations in parks not in the city's downtown core back to the Cycle 1 level, but we still will be doing activations outside in specific areas. The proposed budget consolidates 2 community granting programs, the Recreation for All and Get Moving, into 1 program. The 2 programs serve similar populations and for similar purposes, which is to provide grants to groups to provide culturally relevant health and fitness-focused programs for under-resourced communities or where health and enrichment disparities are prevalent. In 2023, the 2 programs awarded approximately $440,000 in grants, which resulted in groups providing 3,000 hours of engagement and serving approximately 10,000 participants. This change reduces grant funding available to $400,000 from $600,000. Therefore, we feel that this change will still provide for similar outcomes. The proposed budget also reduces staffing levels in 3 department leadership and support teams, including policy and performance, communications and business systems, and customer service units through the reduction of current vacancies. Finally, the proposed budget makes an ongoing reduction to SPR's environmental programming line of business in 2026, not 2025, by 50% or about $1 million. The department will, however, be seeking public-private partnerships to mitigate service disruptions from this budget reduction, which eliminates operation of the Discovery Park Visitor Center and associated citywide programming. This is an important program, and again, we have to make some adjustments to meet other needs, and so that's why I want to point out that we have a year. Thankfully, the way that the budget was structured, these reductions won't take place in 2025, they'll take place in 2026. But with that said, we know that there are many, and I've talked to many strong environmental programs in the city of Seattle, community groups, nonprofit organizations, people that do this type of work and are interested in expanding it. And so I want to use my team to explore those public-private partnership opportunities. One, it's good for local business because we support Seattle businesses and Seattle workers and entrepreneurs. And then if we can get those to fruition, then we are able to continue the services for parents and kids. So it's a little bit of a strategy that we're going to have to engage with, but it's an important one that I think public-private partnerships are really important. I'd also like to talk about some of the citywide efficiencies that help support the general fund savings. So the mayor's office, through its One Seattle Graffiti Plan, announced in October 2022 a strategy to combine resources available citywide for graffiti removal teams. In support of this strategy, the proposed budget includes a transfer of the graffiti abatement resources from the Seattle Public Utilities Department to Seattle Parks and Recreation, including SPU's graffiti rangers, a dedicated team responsible for inspection assessments, dispatch compliance, and graffiti abatement across various city assets. This change will save approximately $500,000, $500,000 annually in general fund savings related to the SPU's overhead rate. The proposed budget also includes a transfer of about $600,000 from SPU to SPR to support the provision of portable toilets in busy parks. So I wanted to point out that those are two ways that we are contributing to efficiencies, and we have a program in place to receive those employees and to receive the continuation of the overall city service combined with some of the graffiti abatement that we do on park properties. And then we're going to also do some strategic alignment of other funding sources. The last category of general fund saving strategies realigns certain programs eligible for other funding sources, including payroll tax and ad tax. The budget preserves the Downtown Buskers program by shifting about $224,000 to admission tax revenues. This program coordinates and funds performers such as musicians and performance artists to perform in and activate downtown parks and spaces. The budget preserves the Arts in the Parks program by shifting $436,000 to admission tax revenues. Through this program, artists and art organizations are able to activate park spaces throughout the city in a process coordinated in partnership with the Office of Arts and Culture. The arts program is also shifted to the admission tax revenue.
They're down. Can you test your mic real quick? Can you test your mic? Yeah, they're dead. Okay, let me turn it off and turn it back on.
We're going to take a brief.
Mic check. There we go.
Mic check.
Let me get yours on.
Let me just double check here. And Ed, down in our Emmy award-winning Seattle channel, are you with us, or are we still broadcasting?
Seattle channel, can you please confirm that you can hear us in chambers? They can hear us. Thank you.
They can hear us. Thank you. And just with this brief interruption, I will share Councilmember Saka came in before your presentation began, and Councilmember Wu joined us in the introduction of it at 2:09 p.m. for the record to reflect. Back to you, Superintendent.
Thank you, sir. For SPR's Teen Programming Arts Program is also shifted to the admission tax revenues, approximately $224,000. This longstanding free summer program with a focus on youth of color introduces young people to the world of theater. If any of you have ever been to this, and if you haven't been to this, I highly encourage you to. I went my first time this year. It was at Benaroya Hall. I literally felt as though I was watching a Broadway performance and seeing so many kids of Seattle youth performing on stage with their parents and family, and just the most amazing experience. And I'm just so proud that we were able to support and continue this type of service, which helps launch kids into positive outcomes. And finally, the proposed budget shifts a portion of the Center City Activation Program to the Payroll Expense Tax Fund. It's about $186,000. This program is offered in partnership with the Associated Recreation Council to provide concierges in parks. And please note the overall baseline resources are retained, but due to the cost of doing business for ARC, there will be some reductions in concierge coverage. Pioneer Square will be prioritized per our contract with DSA. The remaining will be used to support activation of other downtown parks such as City Hall Park, Denny, and Hinghe. Similar to the city's other funds, the increased cost of doing business also affects the Park Fund and the MPD. Again, the flexibility of the Park District Fund was able to mitigate the impact of these escalating costs through a realignment of the built-in annual inflation factor, about 4%, and through the distribution of the inflation reserve included in the financial plan to mitigate inflation in the Park Fund. Rather than proposing impactful reduction to services valued by the community to close the gap, the proposed budget addresses the Park Fund sustainability by identifying fee increases to mitigate this shortfall, specifically for aquatic centers and at the Amy Yee Tennis Center, special events and facility rentals, athletic field permits, and revocable park use permits, or permits for non-park use of parkland. The proposed changes are generally in line with what other jurisdictions are charging. In fact, in some cases, Seattle is behind market rate. Most of the fee increases would be effective January 1st of 2027. Is it 25? Most of the fees would be effective starting at January 1st of 2025. However, the athletic field fee increases wouldn't be effective until July 1st, recognizing a previous agreement to provide additional notice for field user groups, allowing them to know about the changes, absorb the contacts, or absorb the fees and adjust their fees as needed, if needed. Okay, and those are the snapshots of the overview of our budget. And again, we believe that in this very difficult and challenging time that's before all of us and before you, that this proposed budget allows us to really continue to prioritize parks and continue to deliver services while enacting efficiencies and looking at other revenue sources, and then leaning into being creative and strategic with public-private partnerships going forward and utilizing other community partners to support these services. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Superintendent. And Councilmember Hollingsworth, I'm going to pass it over to you as Chair of the Parks Committee, as well as a couple others, but over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Director Diaz, Superintendent Diaz, and Michelle, and our entire Seattle Park staff. When you talked about the play, acts on stage, definitely wanted to give a shout out to Isaiah Anderson, who does a phenomenal job with those kids. I saw them practice at Langston in our district, and it was just overwhelming great to see, like just emotional to see all those kids have something fun to do and, just really express themselves. So really great program. I know the work that you all do is vital to the health of our city with open access to clean parks, programming, community centers, trails, water. I couldn't be more proud of our Parks Department and the assets that our city has. I think it's a true gift to our city and also comes with great responsibility for us to continue to protect, maintain, and invest. And I don't think, I know myself and you all, Superintendent Diaz, have had many conversations, and especially about the maintenance workers and how they are literally the heartbeat of the Parks Department. I often talked about my dad, 35 years in the Parks Department. He picked up trash at the same playground that his kids played at Garfield. And he was essentially a park ranger. He provided kids with lunches. He broke up fights. He gave the shirt off his back one time when two of my friends were playing around in the wood chips and got mad at the swing. He brought snacks to people. He was phenomenal, and he also mentored some of the current staff who are in the Parks Department now, who are now older. So definitely want to give a shout out to them and everything that they provide to our Parks Department. I also want to recognize that maintenance workers also have to endure very difficult circumstances in 2024 and before they did before the pandemic, just because of, a lot of the social services and a lot of mental health that we see that, are in our parks, and they're on the front lines helping take care and maintain a lot of that. And so just wanted to thank you. And it also doesn't fall on you all. We as a community and society need to take better care of our parks, using the trash cans, picking up dog waste, just simple cleanup after ourselves. And so just wanted to share that, and also recognize that mental health is also parks and recreation and programming. And we also need to continue to support our parents. Our parents are a big piece to this piece when it comes to our kids and their success. And also wanted to recognize the Red Barn Ranch that, Seattle Parks Department will be investing in. That was a facility given to us by the great Elgin Baylor, who was a phenomenal athlete at Seattle University. And I think it's really important for us to understand the importance of parks and our youth, and how, I had a friend locked up for 17 years, and he just got out. And we were literally right here at the corner. I said, "Hey, do you want to come see my office?" And he said, "Joe, I've never been to City Hall." We're just right at the light. But he pointed, he goes, "But I can tell you the address of the King County Jail." And we laughed a little bit about it. But it was a real eye-opening experience for me that he had never been across the street to Seattle City Hall, but he had experienced the other side of that street, and how we have to have resources, exposure, and opportunity for our kids. And we have the resources. We need to expose our youth so they have incredible opportunities. REO, R-E-O. I love acronyms, so I just want my colleagues to know that's my acronym for our kids, REO. One of the questions I had was about the fee increases for youth. And I know that, we're obviously in a budget crisis, but one of the things I wanted to just do a little bit of a dive into is the increases for youth, not for youth, but for the athletic fees for fields. And I know that we're lower than a lot of our competitors, but how we're going to try to mitigate, when I talk to some youth teams and programs, their issue isn't about some of the fees that they pay. They, like, hey, it costs our team, $50,000, but it's more like the condition of the fields that they talk about when they pay. And it's like, hey, we're paying this, but we have conditions of the fields. Could you go into a little bit about potentially that impact on them with the increase in the fields and the expectation on the maintenance that they can expect for those fees?
Yes, absolutely. And it's always challenging, to your point, to raise fees anywhere, right? And so we wanted to be strategic. We didn't want to raise fees on a lot of our programming. And we are still offering, we offer every year scholarships. We try never to turn down a family that's in true need of attending a summer program or a teen program. So, and we'll also still be offering many opportunities, what we call the open fields, where you can drop in and play. You don't need a formalized reservation. So this is first looking at some of our more traditional permitting that we do with private sports groups, adult leagues, youth leagues, and those types of things. But to your point about maintenance, we are continuing to still do investments in turf conversions where possible. That oftentimes, one, it's good for the environment. It helps make access to fields longer and able to offer more opportunities. So a good example was at the Rainier Beach playfields. Parents for years had been complaining about how just muddy and terrible those conditions were. And we have beautiful new fields there that have just opened the door for more play. So we want to look at those opportunities. Some of the fees that we'll take in from increased will go back into maintenance of fields, allow us to shore up some of the gaps. So we want to continue to keep our eye on that. And that's whether it's a synthetic turf field, which still requires maintenance from time to time, or other parts of our field, we still need to work strongly on that. Also, in our overall maintenance, as you all hopefully are seeing, we really have some amazing folks in our maintenance team. And I always say they are out there, rain or shine. They're out there before we're even up. They're up there late at night. There's a lot. I mean, there's so much parkland in this city, which is a blessing. But it's also, to your point, if our citizens aren't taking care of our parks, we have to step in to do that. And so we really want to strategize most on where the public is, what they see, so that we're not taking away from that, and also coming up with some other efficiencies for maintenance. So it's a big haul to do that, but we do believe that we'll continue. The public is not going to see, in fact, some of our early proposals really could have been a lot more daunting, but we really wanted to preserve that and the workers that support it.
Thank you. And then my second question, could you explain the cost savings between the transfer from SPU, the graffiti rangers? What were they called? Yeah, graffiti rangers.
Yes.
And that I'm assuming, and I don't know the process, but I know that there are a lot of parks that get tagged, and I'm hoping that a part of this program too is potentially, and we talked about it when you were at the opening for Beersheba in Rainier Beach, how the bathroom is wrapped around this beautiful, painting and mural. More of that, of the preventative care, so it's not just like, hey, we're just coming, putting paint up every time, that we're kind of preventing some of that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a wise move on behalf of the executive because it leans into that sort of one Seattle approach. One, it's economically, it's saving about $500,000 just because the utility, SPU overseeing that program, utility has just different overhead rates. So economically, it made sense. Also, our teams, to your point, taking care of all of our parks throughout the entire city. One of the things that we deal with is graffiti or vandalism, and we're already working very closely with the mayor's lead for the One Seattle graffiti program. We're part of the IDT. We help lead out on that a lot. So we'll continue to do that and continue to focus, then strategize. We'll have all of our workers together, and prevention and mitigation is the best approach rather than just responding. And so we have strategies to do that in place, and we're beginning to have the talks now with the transfer of the employees coming to SBR, but we think it'll be a very efficient program. There shouldn't be any disruption to the public services they're receiving. If the program works well, we'll actually hope to provide better service by aligning these resources and not having so many different departments doing some similar things.
Well, that's good to know. I'm trying to get, I don't know if any of my colleagues have been to the Wynwood neighborhood in Miami, of all the murals I see Director Noble has, if we could turn Capitol Hill into our own little Wynwood neighborhood, it would be amazing. Just beautiful murals and the color. Seattle's very gray. If we had, it'd just be beautiful. So anyways, I'll throw that out there. And last but not least, my last question before I give it back to the chair, thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me to ask all these questions, so I read about the community center hours, and 2 of them, Bitter Lake and Rainier Beach, had about 81 hours of operational time. I'm assuming that's because of late night. Those are some of the potential, they just have more hours assigned to them, if I'm correct. And we could go, this could be something that we could do behind it, because I just dug deep into some of the stuff, but
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, some of it is late night, some of it's also usage. We're looking at the centers that there's less opportunities around that area, and that's one of the areas that's kind of a hub for activities, so we want to make sure to continue to serve the needs in that community.
Understood.
Yep.
No, got you. I'll do more deep diving with you later. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Committee Chair Hollingsworth. We've got Councilmember Kettle and Vice Chair Rivera. Over to you, Councilmember Kettle.
Thank you, Chair Strauss. Thank you, Superintendent Diaz and the team, including our 2 budget directors, past and present, here at the table. Appreciate it. Enlightening, getting a better understanding, Parks District, General Fund, the interplay. This is really being borne out in this briefing, so I thank you for that. Although I have to start off question with slide 1. Did you actually make it under the conga line in that photo there on slide 1? Just a test here, Superintendent Diaz. Did you were you able to make it underneath?
I was able to, sir.
All right.
I've got some Latin roots like Councilmember Rivera, so we can do a little conga line.
Saving grace. I don't have that, so. I appreciate how you broke it down to robustly activating downtown. Very important, clearly for a whole host of reasons. Appreciate your point about Westlake, and you could see the funding, like with the World Cup 26 in mind. You could see it in different parts, like earlier briefings, and 25 heavy, lighter in 26, because by June, July, it will be over. That period of time. So very important. So thank you. To your point, it is kind of like that center point, and it's going to be a centerpiece once this is all done. But also in downtown, you mentioned Denny, but I think people really need to understand and appreciate the trio of the Denny, but South Lake and the Cascade Parks, and how they can work together, and then also work together with Seattle Center, the waterfront, in terms of developing that kind of experience, not only for the visitors playing off the World Cup, but also for the residents, which is very important. So thank you for the Denny shout out. But and then tied to that is the idea of Portal Park for Belltown, which does not have one, and I know you're aware of it, and I recognize this is a step-by-step process, and so it's outer years in a way, but at the same time, it really needs to have that kind of startup work, particularly because it's a brownfield site. And I'm thinking, what can we do? I mean, it's former State Route 99, it's, responsibilities in terms of any remediation that's needed from an environmental perspective. If we can start some of those processes sooner, and maybe get some state or support, given that it was State Route 99. Really interesting for me. So, and that all plays into, again, robustly activating downtown. And we have to get away from just Westlake, Pike Place Market, and then the waterfront. We have to build that kind of link to Seattle Center, and I think that's a great way to do it with these parks. In South...
Councilmember Kettle, could you a little closer with the microphone? Thank you.
Thank you, Clerk. That's why the mic's on this side now, due to I just need to be a little bit closer. Supporting youth section, very important section, so thank you for this. I have to ask because we did check in with the team. Everything's on track for the Big How, AKA West Queen Anne Playfield, for the start the planning in January 25. So I'm assuming the double negative, everything is good with that in terms of pressing forward. And we'll follow up with the team. In fact, they probably already are on that question. You know, and then tied to that is the Queen Anne Community Center. All these, they all tie in together. The Queen Anne Pool, you know, McClure, you know, middle school, all these things play into together. Mentioned South Lake Union canoe carving. I really want to thank the parks for the help related to the canoe carving center. Very helpful. Again, one of these things that we need to continue on. And then also with, you know, Smith Cove. The advantage of being on the Parks Committee, I know these different pieces are moving along, but Smith Cove is really important too. Now, more generally, and you talk about turf conversion, which is very important for Big How, by the way, because that's constantly in a terrible state, and water management and across the board. But Title IX, which only applies to the schools, but from as a concept, having that balance between the softball fields and the baseball fields, because they've been out of balance, seeking more balance, and that's really important. Do you have anything on that, by the way, in terms of, is that kind of captured in terms of what you're doing in terms of planning out that kind of balance, the softball, using softball, baseball as an example for, you know, that Title IX balance with the girls and the boys?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why I don't want to say, I will say the more turf conversions we do, the more opportunities, if they're multi-use fields, is really important. So when, you know, when we do a turf conversion or we build something, we're not just doing a football field turf conversion or a baseball field turf conversion. The best fields are multi-use sports. So you could use them for a variety of sports. You can also use them for Frisbee, ultimate Frisbee, and all kinds of games. So to the point, the more that we create those, the more opportunity there is then to serve boys, girls, anyone that's playing. And gender parity is really an important thing that we're focusing on in our city. We have good numbers. We could always do better, but I think it's really important for any parks department to always constantly look at the programming and make sure that there are opportunities so that gender parity remains high, so that everybody has access to sports.
And tied to that, as you were mentioning that, it reminded me as well, you know, like the turf conversion and so forth, and then the softball fields. Can you speak to the adult programs? Because the adult programs can leverage that, and which is important in terms of revenue. And I was just curious in terms, you mentioned the fees, but is there something there you can expand on in terms of that flexibility that you were talking about is also flexibility, I think, that could be leveraged by adult programs, which then could bring in fees to help, which may then, in a social housing kind of way, help for the younger people?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, the most challenging, the provision of public space is really challenging for any city, but especially in Seattle, right? We're constrained by water, by land. So we have so much demand for our public fields and spaces. We're also required, we program all of the Seattle Public School fields. And so we are constantly triaging and trying to satisfy a variety of needs. But to your point, there's a lot of different people that use our fields and a lot of partner organizations that help allow us to be flexible, to fill in the gaps. We can't do all of the programming ourselves, and we do a lot of it, and we offer opportunities, but also the ability to lean into those partners and say, can you be the ones that can provide the opportunities? Can you provide more scholarship for kids? Can you make it more accessible? So it's a constant balance that we're trying to do throughout the city. It's not easy, but it's what we do. And we continue to use our space, existing space, as best as possible, but always keeping our eyes on how can we also be creative, I will say. And public-private partnerships, I think, are going to be really important to departments such as ours in the next 2 years. We have underdeveloped assets, to your point as well, some brownfields. We have huge opportunities at other parts of our city where there's a lot of parkland and a lot of facilities and buildings that maybe we don't have the resources to invest in. But why not put out the call to the public to say, can you do something that is a park purpose, that serves the community? We can work out opportunities for you to invest in these properties, perhaps to support your business, and then to provide more opportunities for kids. So I think we need to be open to that. I want to explore those opportunities and help deliver them, because that's where we're going to really make our park transformational and utilize what we have to the best possible investments.
Thank you for that. And it's actually your answer, an earlier part, plus that piece at the end in terms of partner, but you also mentioned the school district. And one question I wanted to ask, because as you can imagine, I don't think people necessarily understand the impact of the school districts and our parks. You know, my daughter learned to ride her bike at Coe Elementary's little park, which is basically a blacktop park, but, you know, or, you know, Catherine Blaine, the K through 8 school at Magnolia, and the whole park system that's kind of, and the school system, it's intertwined. So when the school district is making decisions, how does that affect parks? Are you in communication with them? You know, there's a park near Lincoln High School. Queen Anne is zoned to Lincoln, and there's a park there that they have, but Lincoln's looking to take it for them. And this partnership, this interaction between the school district, can you speak to that and the impact on Seattle parks?
Yes, absolutely. So we work very closely with the Seattle Public School System, our provider of public education in the city of Seattle. The way many of our parks were designed in the early days, you'll notice that, and in many of your districts, you'll often have a library, a park, and a school. And in a lot of situations, a lot of our schools are adjacent to the parks. And I think because of that original design, some schools were built with their own fields and athletic facilities. Some never had them because they had the public park next door, and then some have lost either some of the land to expanding facilities, buildings, parking lots, other things for schools. So there's a huge reliance on, and oftentimes kids go to school, they play at the park before school, after school. So the park is, in a sense, part of the school campus, even though we're separated jurisdictionally. So we work very closely with them. And, you know, we have a responsibility. The kids that go to Seattle Public Schools are our constituents in the city of Seattle. They're the same families and the same kids that come to the after-school programs or that utilize them. So we try to be strategic and thoughtful. We know it's a balance and a relationship with the community. And oftentimes the community doesn't see the connection of parks and schools, but really oftentimes the school system and the children wouldn't be able to do athletic programming if it were not for the park system. So while we don't support the educational needs of the city, we do provide the recreational opportunity, and we do, in that sense, contribute to their health and wellness education. We do communicate with them, and it's very challenging. And again, it's part of how do we manage all of the needs of students, the school district, the sports teams, the adults with the limited land that we have. But it's something that we try to do very thoughtfully and intentionally, and at the end of the day, support children as much as possible.
Great, thank you. And McClure's middle school is a perfect example of that. And one reason why the Big How project is so important, because McClure doesn't have anything. And just to follow up, I recognize it's in the chair's district, but as we both share Magnolia, the Catherine Blaine School is such a key piece of the community. And, you know, on the backside, I'm there on Saturdays with soccer games at 9 o'clock. You know, I don't have the same demand as Councilmember Saka, but I do have some myself in terms of early morning soccer games and the like. So very important. One last, in terms of supporting our youth, and I just asked this in a sense that I know in the mayor's speech, he talked about you know, Fort Lawton, and he talked about adding acreage back to Discovery Park. But when we plan out this project for Fort Lawton. It seems like parks, even pocket or smaller, not a big how, but maybe a small how kind of park, can be butt into that. So would that be part of your planning process in terms of not just relying on throwing 20 acres, whatever, to Discovery, but then you also have something for that development there in, sorry, Chair, this is two things related to Magnolia that I'm speaking to, sorry.
You're fine.
So,
No, I think that's really important, and that project is so unique. It's not just, to your point, adding parkland or throwing more acreage. It's intentionally looking at how can we best serve families that might come as a result of this conversion, and meeting their needs as well as the needs of people who already live there. So there is great opportunity there. It's a huge park. There's some perspectives that we should never do anything there or do anything more there, but I think that's not wise. I think we need to be open to opportunity. And so to your point, looking at what could we do that's additive to people's health and wellness, and also preserves the integrity of that wonderful, majestic park that we know as Discovery. And so similar opportunities have arisen in the past at Magnuson Park and other of our bigger regional parks. There's always opportunity to be thoughtful and to also look at how we can utilize that parkland for everybody.
thank you. My last question relates to public safety and pillar number 4 of our plan related to graffiti. Thank you for the slide and to speak to the graffiti ranger program and also the park ranger program. We'll be following up, and anything on that I would deeply appreciate, because it's additive. It's a one Seattle piece. It's public safety is not just SPD and what it's doing. It's the activation of parks that's bringing people out, but also programs like the graffiti program, and also, of course, the park ranger program. So thank you. I guess that's not a question.
Thank you.
Chair.
There you are. Anything you'd like to add?
No, just that obviously we agree public safety is vitally important to parks, and it's a citywide team effort. Really involves, I think, almost every single department, as well as our citizens. So it's a shared responsibility, but it's one that's very important, because none of the things we're talking about today can occur or will occur if people don't feel safe in the park, or feel like we have some plans and that we think about it and incorporate it. So thank you.
Well said. Up next, we've got Vice Chair Rivera, followed by Council President Nelson, Councilmember Saka, and then Councilmember Morales.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Parks, for being here today. I want to thank you for the partnership. So many opportunities for partnership in all of our districts, and I just want to personally thank you for the partnership in the D4. Could not agree with you more about the importance of accessible and inclusive parks like the Pathways Park that got recently reopened or opened as a Pathways Park in the district. Really appreciate that. And then also want to say I appreciate the partnership related to public safety as regards the park rangers at Magnuson Park and the partnership that they provide with SPD as well. So really want to thank you for all that your team is doing toward those efforts. I know it's difficult, public safety at the parks in general, and so really appreciate all that your team is doing there. And then Councilmember Kettle, thanks for bringing up Title IX and just the, bless you, just the relationship with Seattle Public Schools and the competing interests with all the park space, because not all the schools, as you aptly pointed out, Superintendent, have parks attached to them, and so, or fields rather, and so it makes it really difficult as the city is competing, kids across the city are competing, and grown-ups for that matter, for the park space that is available. So Just wanted to acknowledge that, no question there, because I know you all are working toward the constant looking at the plan and figuring out how to best serve everybody's need, and I readily acknowledge how difficult that is. I just wanted to confirm on the park rangers, there is no change because I didn't see any change in the budget, so that was presented, so I wanted to confirm no changes to that program.
That's correct.
Great to hear. And then the other piece is related to the graffiti abatement and the graffiti rangers moving over from SPU to SPR. Is that the graffiti rangers provide such a huge a service across the city, and more I feel like they have been so helpful in neighborhoods in the district, addressing some of the graffiti needs, not just at the parks and at city assets, but just in general in the community, because we know that we're not able to address via SPD all the issues related to graffiti. And so I know I, for one, have been so grateful for the graffiti rangers' help, even with small businesses in the district. So will that continue, or yes?
Yes, it will continue. It's just a realignment of where the resources and the bodies live, which is currently at SPU. But the programs will continue, the services will continue. They will just be under the purview of the Parks Department, which saves to the City General Fund, but also consolidates and combines some of the services because, again, because there are so many parks throughout the city, which is fantastic, there are oftentimes, they are part of the community. So it's, you have tagging on buildings, commercial buildings adjacent to parks or benches or some of these resources, again, in that One Seattle approach, I think will allow us to realize more efficiency and hopefully better delivery of services.
Great, thank you. Great to hear that that service will continue in that way. And then my last question, really it's both a comment and a question, but teen nights, we've all talked about the importance of teen nights across the city. I'm very grateful that you all have partnered with me on teen nights at Magnuson Park. So I want to thank you publicly for bringing teen nights to the Magnuson Community Center for the families that are living at Magnuson Park. Very grateful for that. And just really a plug for we need more teen nights, not less. And, I don't know, I didn't see anything in here related specifically to teen nights, but would love to hear more, if not today, just at a later point in time, but how we can expand teen nights across the city, because I think they are another, when we talk about youth and mental health, that is another area that, if kids are not feeling supported, that goes toward how they feel emotionally. And I think those teen nights are safe places for them to go. And I think if they have safe places to go, that impacts their mental health. It's all related. And so how we can support more of that across the city is really important. And we're seeing just, as we've all said here, and I'm just reiterating, mental health across teens, across the board, across the city and the country, is just higher incidence of depression and anxiety and suicidality. So, really important to have these safe places and activations for teens during this time post-pandemic. So more of that, please.
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, if you look at the entire budget, we strategically, through the provisions provided to us by the mayor's allocations, specifically is not to disrupt programs such as that. So the reductions, the transfers, the alignments, it was all done under the lens of how can we keep our core programs for our kids, for mental youth health, for access for seniors to recreational programs, to the centers. It was intentionally done and shaped that way so that we didn't have to sit here before you saying, unfortunately, we're not going to have 10 summer night elite teen programs. Unfortunately, we're no longer going to be doing senior, outreach programs or feeding programs. So again, some difficult decisions, but in the overall context of the amount of investments that we're still putting in our public parks, the numbers are really strong. And I just want to reassure you that our team has our eye on that. I call them park professionals, our staff, because all of them are committed in all of their specialty areas to really deliver the best park system that we have. And as you all know, we're now the 6th ranked park system in the United States. It's a badge of honor. It's a commitment to how we maintain our parks, to the amount that we spend per capita, to the types and variety of programs that we offer. And this budget will continue to advance those narratives.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Over to you, Council President Nelson.
Thank you very much. This will be my semi-annual pleading to consider or get staff from the school district and you know, you're nodding because you know I'd say this. Anyway, parks, fields, etc., turfing. Judkins Park Playfield has been a need for a long time. It's school property right in the heart of the city, and baseball and football all year long. It's been a priority of mine, and I believe other folks in the city. So just put it on maybe a to-do list to figure out who needs to get in the same room to discuss what the next steps might be. I know that this, at least just maybe figuring out if we can put a costing exercise on a calendar at some point, or just see how they feel about letting us do that. That'd be good. You rightly noted that providing youth access. So now I'm going into the environmental programming. You note that providing youth access to nature is key to mental health, and yet you're reducing the environmental programming by 50%. I agree that it's quite possible that the strength of that program could continue with a public-private partnership. I just don't understand exactly. Could you please describe it?
Sure. Let me get you do we have the numbers on that?
I thought that it was, it's on page 93. It was my impression that it took youth in the summer and gave them skills, so it was a semi-internship. I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah. Do you want to expand on that program cost savings?
Yeah, so, and we can get you some more detail about it, but
Okay.
the general savings is a cut of about 7.5 FTE in 2026, and these are staff that currently do visitor center operations at Discovery Park and do citywide programming. So at Judkins Park, you may attend an environmental program. If you think of naturalists out in the field that maybe do an owl program, they do things with the school district to support kids' education, and sometimes are like a bring the field trip to the school type of program. So it's good programming.
Thank you. And then just confirming that moving $500,000 from SPU to parks will not result in less graffiti being mitigated, right?
Correct.
Great.
Again, that's a saving. Did you want to add something?
Yeah, it's the same number of staff members doing the same work, just organizationally housed at the Parks Department instead of at SPU.
Can you take a whole bunch more employees? Just kidding. Okay, thank you. That's a big quality of life issue for the people that email me. Thanks.
Well said. Anything additional, Council President?
Nope.
Great. Over to you, Councilmember Saka.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Superintendent Diaz, for sharing this great presentation here with us. First off, kudos to the number 6 ranking in the U.S. of best parks and recreational departments and programming facilities in the country. Like, hat tip to you, the workers that actually do the work to enable that type of ranking, the mayor's office, our distinguished chair down the dais from me, Chair Hollingsworth of the committee, so many people, this council for providing the great resources. But so hat tip, kudos, let us celebrate that. And look, I'm fiercely competitive. And so let us also do the work to make sure we can rise in the rankings and be number 3 or 2 or heck, number 1 even over time. So, but that is terrific. I want to, I guess, first comment on something that Councilmember Rivera commented on a moment ago, which I thought was very spot on. But rather than just saying, "Hey, what she said," I want to add my own 2 cents. She talked about the importance of a holistic approach to youth and youth safety and creating opportunities for youth and teens. And it's not just youth mental health. Yes, that is an essential part of a holistic approach, but we need to be creative and have after-school programs and the like. And so I couldn't, which is something that I couldn't agree more with. And as someone who's someone who's overcome the foster care system to ultimately live in any number of public housing arrangements and low-income apartments and this and that. I benefited personally from some of these after-school programs. And in Kent, where I ended up going to high school, for example, Project Lighthouse was key for me. And at my apartment's gym, there was a community program there. I think it was offered through the city, but it was delivered through a number of local partners. And I knew after school, a couple days a week, I'd go play basketball with some friends. Get beat and pick up basketball games, but they didn't want to see me on the boards. I was a beast on the boards, guys. But and also get some snacks that were generally nutritious, and more importantly, above those personal experiences and kind of fellowship opportunities for youth, it was an opportunity for me to stay out of trouble, and so. Between that and some of the after-school programs and open gym on site, and I was looking on the website, the parks website, and I saw like some of the late-night programs that are offered through a number of community centers and teen life centers, which is great. I would also just encourage you all to think so. And you talked a little bit about like the planning efforts and like historically and how like on-site versus city property versus school property and the like. But for some of these open gym type opportunities and after like teen night programs, late night programs, I would just encourage you to partner more directly with the schools and not just have those solely at community centers, because I do think it does reflect a non-trivial, potentially barrier to entry. You might think, oh, it's just right across the street. Southwest Youth Teen and Life Center, directly across the street from Chief Sealth, and so they can just walk across the street. But if someone doesn't normally or would have otherwise no reason to go there, but for this program, that might go into a new space, might be a potential barrier. It might not. But again, what I would just encourage you to think about is like, doing more of these on-site in the school programs, like open gym type of programming, and if for nothing else, as a potential means to help drive adoption, because we need to be in the business of doing more than just providing new offerings or new programs or new services. We need to actually be doing the hard work of making sure we're driving adoption and people are actually utilizing these programs and utilizing these new services and like actually achieve, ultimately in the case of these late night programs, more and more people are going that represent the most kind of at opportunity youth, if you will. So we're not just creating a program on paper, we're actually creating an experience that a lot of people are using. And so, in any event, that is, so kudos to you, Councilmember Rivera, for your great comments. I couldn't agree more. I do have a question around something else that has come up a number of times now, and Superintendent Diaz, you mentioned this as well, around the athletic field and turf conversions. And so, which is important to me, and I know Council President and, the Chair Hollingsworth and any number of us on this dais at the council level. And as I understand it, Parks already has a plan to not only maintain, but like at least explore converting more fields, right, over time. And so, you know, this is an effort that is really important to me for a number of reasons, and including gender parity and equity considerations. So how does this proposed budget, how does the funding allow us to, you know, make progress on field turf conversions? And can you also speak to the potential environmental and health concerns that some people might have about turf conversions?
Yes, absolutely. So the good thing is that our program, first of all, we are having an athletic field summit. I think you're aware of that, and other members are, and if not, we can give you more information on that. But we're bringing back a program, an outreach program that we had a lot before the pandemic, but there's a lot of people interested in athletic fields for a variety of reasons. And so we are hosting an athletic field summit where we're inviting the community to come out, ask questions, some of our partner groups, and then also continue to update on our capital plans. The good thing about our athletic field conversion program, capital money is not specifically reliant on general fund. It comes from the MPD through the various cycles. And so we have a number of existing renovations underway, in progress, that will continue to go forward. To your point about environmental concerns, there was certainly a time, I know this from my previous job and experience, when some of the materials that were used in the development of athletic fields had some health concerns. I will say before I got here, Seattle Parks and Recreation have moved away from that type of infill. That was not the most sustainable and healthy of product. And I just point to the most recent when I did the field opening at Rainier Beach play fields. I was so proud to announce and did some pre-inspections and work with the development. That infield is actually cork, and it's a natural, environmentally safe, people safe product, and there's other types of products on the market. So we do not use any harmful products in the development of our fields, which is really good, and also implements the best environmental practices. And then to Councilmember Kettle's point earlier, we have to really be mindful of how we use water in this city, and looking at when you're the largest landowner of land in the city of Seattle, you can water will be the highest. So one, financially, it makes sense. Two, it's environmentally good. And we're continue to invest in this program as much as possible where appropriate throughout the city. And I will say for the record, we also recognize that community does also need, value, and loves grass and open fields, and that's important. And so nothing in our program will ever take away from the enormity of those ability to touch those natural spaces. We deploy them in areas where we want to increase access for kids of all abilities, to support schools and to support other needs that come up through community involvement, I will say, by the way. And the Athletic Field Summit will be another opportunity for a community to give input.
Yeah, no, thank you, Superintendent Diaz. Appreciate your comments there. And on that issue, to close it out from my perspective, the athletic field turf conversions, I am aware that Judkins Park is a good sort of candidate project. I've seen that one firsthand. My daughter had a few, or at least one softball game that I'm aware of there. And me and Councilmember Hollingsworth were talking about that. And I also initiated just an informal survey, sent it out to my constituents in District 1 a few weeks back. And out of the 8 projects, potential candidates, that we sourced, by the way, having conversations with all the 5 or 6 neighborhood, community, recreational baseball organizations and leagues that didn't include parks, because we know how to connect and contact you. So we sourced that a candidate of 8, or candidate list of 8 potential options within District 1, and Fairmont Park Elementary, of those 8 that were included, was we heard the strongest support for converting that one. So I'll just note that. My next question relates to water fountain access. And just as an aside, yesterday, so Councilmember Kettle mentioned, like, he basically knows what I do in the weekend. Yes, it all relates to kids' youth sports and activities and events and this and that. And right now it just so happens to be soccer season, so 3 kids in soccer plus other activities. So I spent a lot of time, at various games and practices. Yesterday, one of the games that I was at Hiawatha Playfield, and there was I had some parents come up to me because I am just another parent attendee at these games, but I'm also their humble servant and council member. And they know that too. So I hear all kinds of stuff there. But in any event, I had a few parents come up to me and complain that the water fountains at Hiawatha Playfield were not functioning. And I asked my team to kind of follow up offline with you. So I don't want, I'm not expecting a comment on that issue. Let's work offline. My sense is it's probably related to some of the ongoing construction there. But regardless, how does this budget position us to do more? Because there's a whole winter weatherization efforts that kind of ties into some of the closed restrooms and close water fountains during certain times of the year. How does this budget position us to continue to make progress on those efforts?
The budget specifically prioritizes certain core services, and among them is a focus when we looked at our maintenance and our approach to whether that's major maintenance, repairs to existing facilities such as water fountains, community centers, shelters. The focus continues to be on areas that are most used, so public restrooms, really important to the public. Also addressing the highest need areas, so making sure that we're fixing things and keeping a priority on that. That's still part of our plan. And I think there's opportunity as well. We can talk more offline about it, but I want to explore some opportunities with our utilities on how we can perhaps implement hydration stations in various parks using money from the utilities as a reinvestment back. And one, it's a better use than a traditional water fountain, and it allows people to have access to water more, and I think there might be some opportunity. It's a similar program that I worked on in my previous job, and so I'd like to explore that opportunity here with some of our utility partners and see if we might develop this One Seattle approach, be innovative, and serve our community better. So that's something that we're looking at, and I'm happy to talk more with you about it offline. But to your specific question, although we're making adjustments in areas, we're going to prioritize on the very things that you talked about. So in that sense, the proposed budget does not affect that.
Thank you. And I'll just finally note that, I think we have an opportunity. I don't want Seattle to ever be a childless city, big city that some other cities, bigger cities across this country are experiencing the challenges associated with affordability and the amount of programs and amenities for families. San Francisco is, some would say that, hey, that's a largely childless city. I lived in San Francisco before during law school, and so I think we have a policy responsibility to make sure that this is and I've heard time and time again, oh yeah, I used to live in Seattle, and once we started having kids, we moved out to the suburbs. So we need to make it more for any number of reasons, including public safety, by the way. And I think we have a opportunity to make Seattle an affordable city that working families can actually live in today and tomorrow. And then also creating adequate programs and services and offerings, whether it's youth after-school programs or, more field athletic turf conversions and whatever it is to make sure that once people have made the decision to start a family here and stay here, that, that this is a place that they continue to live and thrive and raise their families. So I think we have an important policy obligation from a working families perspective to do exactly that. Parks is less centrally involved in the affordability aspect, but you are the tip of the spears in making sure we have great, healthy parks that are open, safe, welcoming, accessible to all, excellent programming, like delivered in an extraordinary way, et cetera, et cetera. So that is all I wanted to ask and state for the record. No further questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Superintendent, anything you'd like to share there?
No,
All right.
Just, yeah, we agree with you.
Fantastic. Councilmember Morales.
Thank you. I think in the interest of time, I'm just going to read through my questions, maybe for central staff to note, and then we can follow up. I do want to start by thanking you for acknowledging the importance of field trips and all of the assets that we do have in this city for our young people. It is so important, particularly for kids who are growing up in low-income neighborhoods, whose schools don't have the resources. My daughter went to Aki Karosi for middle school, and she did not have a single field trip in 3 years. So the things that you're able to provide are really important. That said, that is the lens through which I'm looking at these reductions, and so I do have questions about some of the things that we see. So I know you have efficiencies that you are trying to provide. The challenge for me is that you're providing them by eliminating, for example, the big day of play, which is really important in the Rainier Valley. It's one of the few free activities for young people all year long, and especially in a part of town where they don't get to go on field trips at their schools. Things like that are really important. The budget also proposes reducing activation programming for parks, so I would be interested to know what resources will continue to be allocated to maintaining activation programming. To compare that to what is being invested in activation in the downtown area. I would like to know how much is being retained for the park concierge program, and if that is also predominantly for downtown or for parks outside of the downtown area. I understand the community funds granting program is reduced from 600 to 400. As you noted, these programs are really important for communities of color. They are specifically for providing green space and programming for neighborhoods that are the highest need. The Recreation for All and Get Moving programs have a real successful track record for providing culturally relevant programming for neighborhoods with the highest need. So it is problematic for me to see any reduction in those programs. I want to understand better the switch to the ad tax. So you mentioned Art in the Park. You mentioned, I think, some programming for Mohai. There were several other things you mentioned that would be switched to the ad tax. And I want to make sure that what I think that says is that whatever that totals to would be reduced from the Office of Arts and Culture budget and their ability to program money and grants. So I just want to make sure I understand that. Okay. And then in terms of FTE reductions, I think I understand that over the biennium, you're reducing the third shift maintenance workers by 25 FTEs. Is that wrong?
I think you're seeing some of the original proposals that didn't get selected. I'm
That did not.
happy to report.
Okay. Well, that's good to
Big day
know.
of play is not impacted, and
Okay. That's good to know. Yeah, I was looking through some of the budget documents that are provided as background, so it's possible that the proposals that you submitted there were not part of what was packaged. So that's why I looked through those, and that's why I asked the questions. Okay, and then I do want to ask about the proposed increase in aquatics fees. And I have some questions about the the swim equity program, which I can ask later. But I do find it troubling that we are increasing prices for swim lessons, particularly for I'm particularly concerned about low-income families and kids in a city surrounded by water, where we do know that it is Black and brown kids who drown the most in this city. Anything that makes it harder for them to access that resource is a problem for me, and I understand that the increase in revenue would potentially be used for scholarships, but it just doesn't make sense to me to raise the fees and then increase scholarships. So that doesn't seem like a sustainable strategy here, and I will want to dive into that a little bit more and understand it. Those are all my issues for now, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Morales. Councilmember Moore.
Thank you very much, Chair. So thank you for the presentation. And I, too, echo the comments of many of my colleagues about the importance of parks for youth and youth programming. But being at the other end of the spectrum, I also want to shout out the incredible programming that you're doing for seniors and people who are 50 and over. Those are critically important to our community. There's an epidemic of loneliness and disconnection for people 50 and plus. So I just want to shout out to Parks for the really important programming, particularly around your dementia programming. That's also been incredibly important. And I was able to utilize that resource with my mother, which was really a lifesaver. So thank you for that. And my only plug there would be, could we expand the hours? So, because right now they're really morning and early afternoon. It would be nice when we have more money to look at actually having those opportunities available for people later in the afternoon and early evening. I think we would really see a huge increase in participation. And certainly there could be some fee-based involved in that as well. And then my last shout out is thank you for teaching me how to play pickleball. So that's it.
Was it at Green Lake?
It was at Magnuson.
All right, there we go. I believe that was the last council member with their hand up. Seeing no other questions, I'm going to share my reflections, and then I'll pass it to Councilmember Hollingsworth to close this section of our budget presentation. Similar to the way Councilmember Morales shared, I'm going to read out the issues that I've come back to. So for CBO and central staff, if you could key in here. Although the first one I would like to discuss, which is maintenance and activation outside of downtown. It is really, I've seen the absolute benefit of the activation that has occurred at Ballard Commons Park, in part because my district office, you can see the park from there, and the transformation that having a concierge there and having the yoga in the park and the movie nights on the new trailer that you've got. I mean, it's been incredible. The work that you all do transforms people's daily lives in ways that probably folks in your department don't fully realize, because it's that lived experience, it's that built environment that makes or breaks a person's day. Can you help me understand, are we really, in this budget, are we really just, we don't have activation outside of downtown?
The proposed budget still allows for activation outside of the downtown. So there is reduction in some of the ability to reach all parts of the city, but there is still going to be activations, concierges, and other opportunities that are outside what we define as the downtown core.
Okay, that's helpful. And then, just for both central staff and CBO, I'm hoping to do a position by position review of every position that is termed to be closed or abrogated through this budget. And so I'm not going to go through those positions within your department right now. And for anyone watching, please know that I'm going to be doing that.
Just real quick, as follow-up to the question you posed to me earlier, we do have that request into CBO, and we'll be getting information hopefully shortly.
Fantastic. Yes, it's not just Director Noble asking hi. It's coming straight from me. Looking at pages 92 and 93 of the budget book here, coming back to the fee increases, understanding that the aquatics program, the revocable use permits, the athletic fields, special events, the tennis center, and community center rentals are the fees that are looking to be increased. Are there others, or is that, are we going to increase the fees for pottery class or for, an after-school programming, or is this the full list?
So the pottery classes are fees that are done in partnership with the Associated Recreation Council, so they're not in the fees and charges. So we can get back to you on whether or not we think that is going to increase. I do know that we're talking with ARC about childcare fees potentially being raised next summer. So for this school year, they would not be changed.
Thank you. It's a hard choice, right? Because when we increase fees, we do limit access and at a different rate than if it's a very low fee. But at the same time, we can't provide some of the programming without these fees. And what's most important for me is that I have a full comprehensive understanding when I'm going into these budget sessions and the budget decisions. Because if the ARC classes are also getting their fees raised while we're also doing this, that I need to just know that information. And kind of to what Councilmember Morales was alluding to with, I think you were probably reading some of the BIPs that we received that haven't been collated necessarily. And it just demonstrates that when everyone started their budget exercises in January, this could have been a lot worse. I'm not saying any of the reductions to any of the programming is good. I'm not saying that any of these are happy choices to be made, but this could have been a lot worse in some of these hard trade-offs that you've made, like with fee increases, buoy us a little bit from some of these other reductions in services and programming. And so I just want to acknowledge that. I know that park rangers are funded in the Metropolitan Parks District cycle. At least that was where we got the 28 additional to the 2 that we had, while we at the same time negotiated with SPOG to get their jurisdiction outside of downtown. Do we have any plans of now to bring on another 28 or another 2?
I mean, we definitely should talk about that for the next cycle, which we're going to start planning probably at the end of next year. But we thankfully that was an allocation that was made, and we filled all the positions. So we would love to hire more, but we don't have the funding or immediate plans to do it. But caveat by saying, I think, and I'm just assuming you all agree, the program is key and crucial to the park system. We need more park rangers, so let's figure out how to get that in the funding, because now that we are citywide, the 28, which was factored around a downtown map, we now have to look at serving our entire city. We probably need a 50 park ranger unit.
Or at least 2 sets of 28, or 3 sets of 28.
Sure, 56.
I mean, I really appreciate them. I've had really good experiences with your parks rangers. I'm the secret shopper that doesn't tell them who I am. And I've just watched them navigate some kind of challenging situations in a really graceful and professional manner.
I did that once with the park concierge program, and it was like Undercover Boss, and it quickly made its way back to, people said, you can't do that anymore. I just went up to it, but it's a good way to see how people interact with the public.
It was an amazing situation.
Good.
In the interest of time, I won't share more about that. And then just to be clear, Lake City Community Center still happening.
Yes, to be clear, and not using a double negative, as my budget director pointed out to me. Lake City Community Center is still going forward. The development of the housing and the recreational center.
Fantastic. As you've seen up here, Councilmember Kettle advocating for things in District 6, Councilmember Strauss advocating things in District 5. It was a decade ago that I went on my first community walk trying to get a new community center. So there we have it. Chair Hollingsworth, over to you. I'll follow up with you all with some more questions as well.
Okay, I'll be super quick. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Superintendent Diaz. I did look up. You're absolutely right. We are in the top top 10 for park systems, so that's amazing. For competition, Councilmember Saka, Washington, D.C. is #1, and their parks are pretty phenomenal. But we could get there. And Minnesota and St. Paul were #2. They also have the best state fair, and shout out to my Aunt Heidi in Minnesota, who makes the best apple pie. Seattle Parks, incredible asset to our city. I think we have an opportunity as we continue to grow as a city to continue to maintain it. Thank you, Superintendent Diaz. I see the love and passion that you have every time we're at an event, every time you're posting, every time you send an email, the Seattle Shine sunglasses and shirts, like every time you just really embody what Seattle Parks is, and just so grateful for your leadership and looking forward to working with you. And thank you, Michelle. I know it was a lot to do all these budget and numbers and work behind the scenes and get all this together. So thank you as well. Looking forward to working with Parks. I'll have some behind the scenes questions just to ask while we're doing a deeper dive, but just want to thank you for all your work and all of the Seattle Parks Department. We love y'all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I just want to say thank you, council members. It's a pleasure to always be before you. It's a pleasure to have gotten to know you the past year and a half. We are at so many events together. You all love the community. You love parks. And I echo everything that you're saying. It's a privilege to be the superintendent of one of the greatest departments in the city. And at the end of the day, you have my commitment. We got to keep our eyes on our kids. We also have to help our adults stay healthy, and we have to take care of our aging population. Those three things have got to be our North Star, and I'm just privileged to lead a department and to also have a mayor that really believes in the power of parks. So thank you for your leadership and your partnership and your governance of this great city. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. And as we're bringing up Department of Education and Early Learning, we're going to say thank you to the Seattle Parks and Recreation Department. And Clerk, will you read the short title into the record?
Agenda item 4, Department of Education.
Yeah, keep going. Sorry.
And Early Learning for briefing and discussion.
If I could just, as the next speakers are coming up, I wanted to provide just a little bit of technical clarification.
Sure.
As we went and visited you all, we made it clear that we were going to get you a list of all of the potential budget proposals that had been rejected by the mayor in his work on the budget. And due to some technical issues, we've had the full set of changes, but we haven't had a way to distinguish those that had been incorporated into the budget and those that had been rejected. Moments ago, we've sorted that technical point out, so we are very shortly, I think by tomorrow, be able to get you the list that we had promised, which is really the set of budget changes that departments considered, but or brought forward to the mayor's office and to the budget office that were ultimately rejected and not incorporated into the budget. I say this because I think Councilmember Morales had been looking through the full packet and had seen some that she thought had been incorporated, but in fact had been rejected. And I didn't want any of you, the rest of you, to be in that place. And we have, I think, again, just about solved that problem, and we'll get you this full list again by tomorrow, if not sooner.
Thank you, Director Noble. And as the Parks Department is walking out the door, I will also just thank them and the upcoming presentation for your focus on all ages and abilities, both in the classroom and in our parks. With that, Director Chappelle, I'm going to turn it over to you. We'll take your presentation, and then I'll turn it over to Councilmember Rivera, the chair of your committee. Okay. Over to you.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. Thank you all for this opportunity to be in front of you today. I am Dwayne Chappelle, and I'm joined by my amazing colleague, our CFO, Jonathan Swift. And we look forward to going over the 2025-2026 proposed budget with you. Okay, so just to get started, as with any investment we do, this is our mission. And so what we do, we aim to transform the lives of Seattle's children, youth, and families through our strategic investments in education. And the vision is where a city where all children and families have equitable access to high quality education services, support, and outcomes. Our key impact areas are access to affordable quality childcare, kindergarten readiness, college and career readiness, and post-secondary degree, credential, or certificate attainment.
And Director, for process point, Councilmember Morales is taking the meeting from her office. So for anyone viewing, she's still with us, just not on the dais. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember. So to track our progress towards our impacted areas, here are just high-level results that come from our 2022-23 annual report. So what you'll see is that with our child care assistance program, DEEL, we supported 853 children, providing access to affordable child care services. And for those families that are enrolled in the program, they've seen an average savings of $6,500 annually. For our Seattle preschool program, DEEL, we've served 2,042 children this year, and those have achieved a 9 to 14% gain in kindergarten readiness among our Hispanic, Latinx, Asian, and Black and African American children. For our K-12 services, DEEL, we've provided support to over 24,000 K-12 youth, where we've seen a 6% gain in English language arts and math proficiency among participating students in the 2022-23 academic year. And for the Seattle Promise, we've enrolled 1,250 scholars in the program with a 34% completion rate for students earning a degree within 3 years and supporting their transition into further education or career paths. To achieve these results, we implement performance pay contracting with our providers. This really ensures that we're making progress towards our results. We recently presented to the Libraries, Education, and Neighborhood Committee on our results and evaluation findings to date. And if you didn't have a chance to see it, these reports, they are available on our department's website. In a moment, you'll hear more about this contract accountability structure and what happens when providers do not achieve the agreed upon deliverables, as well as the reason for the small underspend resources. So our DEEL budget covers, and which I'm excited about, our 3 Mayor Harrell's budget priorities. As we know, the impacts that COVID have had on our young scholars. The first priority is student well-being, where expanded investments in the student mental health resources. It covers youth programs, which are sustaining investments for youth development and summer learning. And then we have the post-secondary success, as I just mentioned. And with this, ultimately maintains opportunities for schools to complete, or should I say for our students to complete a 4-year degree. Please know that within the post-secondary success, one of the priorities is to ensure that our Seattle Promise scholars have the ability to transfer to UW, University of Washington, in which we made sure this was possible through our path to UW investment. So with that being said, what I'll do now is I'll pass this over to Jonathan to take us through the rest.
Pleasure to be here with you today. I'm Jonathan Swift again. I'm the CFO for the Department of Education and Early Learning. It's nice to see you all. I'm going to talk about just the overall budget picture for DEEL. And I'm going to touch on a few key investments. I'm going to spend a little bit of extra time on our youth mental health investment because I think there's a lot of interest in that, as there should be. And then touch on some continuation of services that we really want to highlight within the budget. And then we'll end with some questions and discussion after that. So as you can see, DEEL's proposed budget from 2024 to 2025 actually shows a reduction in general fund services. What that really truly reflects is a discontinuation of some one-time investments that were in the budget. So for example, we had childcare worker bonuses that were contained with the budget, and that was only meant to be a one-time investment. There are a couple of other things that are illustrated in the reduced resources that are available for general fund, but we have no service impact from these changes. So we've shifted a couple of investments like restorative practices, as well as some investments in culturally specific and responsive programming from the general fund to some available resources within our levy funds. I do want to just highlight, and I'm going to repeat this several times just because it's easy to overlook this. Our budget is a continuation of services. We do not have reductions to direct services. So a lot of things that you're seeing in our budget are simply shifts to available resources, oftentimes with available fund balance. In the payroll expense tax, you can actually look at the change from 2024 to 2025. I think that all the council members know that at the end of 2023, a lump sum amount was included in DEEL's budget of $20 million without a design or a plan on how we might use that. And so over the past, I would say year, we've been working on that plan. And this actually just reflects a right sizing of that budget to what the ongoing types of services that we're going to be providing. And of course, I'm going to talk about that in quite a bit of detail in just a moment. I think that the other piece to emphasize here too, and especially as you're shifting from looking at 24 to 25 to 26, is you'll notice that in other funds, the largest amount of funds that we have in 2025, there's a reduction. It's a reduction of a little bit over 40%. And that really is to reflect the sunsetting of the current FEP levy. So the current FEP levy sunsets in the 25-26 school year. And I think that folks are aware that we are doing a lot of internal planning on that levy replacement. There'll be a lot more discussion with council, with the mayor's office starting into 2020. Was that just me or was that?
It's a fly.
It is a fly. I thought he was swatting at me. We will be bringing back lots of discussion on this upcoming revised levy in 2025. So go to this next slide. So I do want to talk about some of the notable changes, and I'm going to spend most of the time on youth mental health. I'll talk a little bit more about 4 investments that are in our K-12 and our post-secondary division that are really a continuation of either pilot programs or added programs that have had a lot of collective positive impact. So our budget and DEEL's budget, as well as you heard from Parks and you'll hear from Human Services tomorrow, really addresses significantly youth mental health needs. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what the purpose of this is, just to remind folks. I think you are all very in tune to this and understand what's at risk here and what our opportunities are. And I'm also going to talk about touch on some of the key findings and recommendations that have come from our Innovation and Performance Office. Fundamentally, the proposals you're about to see are based on a lot of outreach, a lot of work, not just with members of the community, but with our partners, such as Public Health and Seattle Public Schools, as well as community-based organizations. And I do want to emphasize just the importance of this existing and ongoing partnership that we have with Seattle Public Health, Seattle King County Public Health. They are a cornerstone of this implementation. They have a strong presence at the schools. They have a strong presence in the community, and we are really going to leverage that partnership in order to make sure that we see results, and we see results quickly. I also just want to mention that we've actually had some really good just direct experiences with a small-scale pilot. And so we'll be finishing up with 7 schools, a mental health pilot in the 25-26 school year, 25-26 school year. And we've seen a lot of very positive results, and we're learning from those findings. What's really important to emphasize is that we're taking those 2 pieces of knowledge, the outreach and our own experience, and we're combining that together to really scale up what would be a youth mental health investment. So what you're seeing on the screen takes from the report, A Student-Led Approach to Mental Health Services. I'd encourage you to take a look at that if you haven't already. This was created by our Office of Innovation and Performance. And I'm going to use this framework as we're going through it, and it's these prevention, early intervention, and treatment. So DEEL's budget focuses on all three of these aspects. And so in terms of the prevention and early intervention, you can see sort of on the left the research insights that are had and the types of recommendations that are made, not just by our staff or other organization staffs, but by the community. These are the things that they're asking for, they're demanding, they're saying this is what we really need. So on this slide, I'm going to talk about this, again, this framework of prevention, early intervention, and intervention. And I'm going to start with the top portion of this by really talking about what these mean. So when it comes to 2 of the 5 investments, which are Reach Out Seattle and universal screening, these are really helping our kids, our youth, get past the barriers in order to receive services. Under intervention, we actually have 3 additional pieces. Some are community-based, school-based, as well as telehealth services, and I'll go into more detail about that. For prevention and early intervention, so Reach Out Seattle, we've had some initial planning work that we've been doing to have really a full throttle reach with kids, so that these types of things that are barriers right now, especially when it comes to the negative, I'll just use, rather than using the big word, the negative aspects that people often see with seeking mental health services. At this point in time, we've done some planning, but we're actually going to move to scale to actually do a community-wide impact that's really focusing on actually the same things that the Parks Department talked about, reaching youth where they're at, not using posters and and things on, I'm sorry to say this, on Seattle Public TV, but things like app-based pushes, using influencers, really using a full-fledged, more youth-enabled approach to removing some of the stigma that's associated with mental health. The other piece that I think is really exciting is that we are going to focus on universal screening and expand that significantly. So right now, all kids in middle school in Seattle Public School are screened for mental health, but no high school students are. It's not a part of the design of the program. And so what we are hearing and what we are going to enable is to actually move to universal screening, full universal screening, and go up to scale within 2025 in order to do that. Universal screening is important because you detect problems early and often. You can actually divert kids or give them the best resources before things become crisis, which is really what early intervention is almost always about. The third area, intervention, is really the on-the-ground work. This is where we can have a positive and direct and an immediate impact with kids. So again, we are using the leverage of our partnerships with public health, with Seattle Public Schools, to really provide additional services. We will actually serve a lot more kids, and I'll actually talk about this in the next slide. And we're not just doing it with existing sites. We're actually looking at doing Community Hub and really expanding out the reach for kids of where they want to be. So a lot of times, the inconvenience of only having these types of services at a limited number of places is the barrier itself. But combining these different things together, prevention, early intervention, and then the intervention can help significantly change that tide. The other area, the fifth area, is around telehealth services. And it's been a really interesting and exciting thing to actually look out into the United States particularly. We are seeing a lot of small and large-scale interventions focused on telehealth services. There are a lot of ready models that we can actually easily, literally piggyback on in other cities and other jurisdictions as well as other states. And there are evidence-based practices that use a suite of services. Sometimes it's direct mental health services, the typical sort of talk therapy. Other things are simply coaching or having availability to apps and education. So all these things work in tandem. So of course, I am the CFO, so I'll talk about the money for just a moment. So this is a sort of 2.5-year investment total with the PET funds. What you can see is that the vast majority of the resources actually go towards treatment. I'm just going to read off a few statistics in terms of the impact that we're anticipating. Keep in mind that this is very early, that we don't have some of these services on the ground in the way that we will have them later on when we scale it up in 2025. But these are sort of estimates of the types of impacts we're expecting to see. So actually, with universal screening alone, this should have an impact of screening an additional 14,000 kids. That really is the intention, and it's all high school based. With treatments such as telehealth, we're looking at, and this is, the models usually say that about 4 to 8% of active high school kids, especially with the schools you're reaching, it's about 4 to 8%. And so that's the equivalent of about 2,200 to 4,000 kids that would be served through telehealth services. With school-based and community hubs, we're looking at an additional 3,500 kids that would be directly served through those services. Of course, everything is a concept until you put it into action, and so I just wanted to basically touch on some of the status and next steps. We're very early in this work. We've been working very fastidiously with our partners, negotiating contracts, putting things out for RFIs and RFPs and all sorts of technical contracting things, but important part of the process to have a fair and transparent process. So we actually have already released our telehealth RFP, and we're going to actually release our school-based in-person request for proposals in October. We actually have been negotiating the scope of work, how we're implementing staffing, different things like that with public health. And we actually anticipate that we will be moving into scaling up in Q1 of 2025, particularly when it comes to the telehealth and school-based services. And then the community-based services will take a little bit more to implement because some of the infrastructure just is not in place, and we need to do the hiring and the facility pieces in order to get this up to scale. So we expect to have that up to scale and running in fall of 2025. That was the short presentation, I hope, on mental health. I know there were going to be some questions. We've already been given a couple of signals about what those might be. I appreciate that. I do want to talk about these other sort of continuation of services. Dwayne mentioned that we use a pay-for-performance model in the vast majority of our contracts. What that means in terms of resources, if the service is not delivered, we do not pay for it. And if the performance is not achieved, we do not pay bonuses. And so what that means every year is we have about 2 to 3% of resources that are committed that end up in savings. And then we, by council code, or not council code, by council legislation and by our implementation and evaluation plan, the path for using that money is to go to our levy oversight committee. They make an endorsement of recommended proposals, and then those come back to you with the regular budget. So that's where this money is coming from. It comes largely from the resources from FEP. So these are all continuation of services, and so I just want to highlight a couple of things just to maybe toot our own horn when it comes to how well things are actually going here. So we have an allocation of continuation through the end of the levy, youth leadership and educator diversity. Youth leadership serves roughly 1,300 people annually. It's focused on skill building and mentorship with kids in the schools, and it roughly serves about 84% of the kids are BIPOC kids. Educator diversity creates a pathway for BIPOC teachers to teach in public schools. Over and over again, research shows that a child who has at least one, just one, it's really amazing, at least one person who is the same color as them increases their potential for finishing high school exponentially. It's an amazing and astounding thing when people see people who are them at schools. The other piece of this is with K-12, and we actually serve about 250 all BIPOC teachers through that. Summer learning is a continuation of really a fantastic sort of experiment that we started coming out of COVID. It was to really give kids summer opportunities to be both educated, entertained, as well as to potentially learn new skills. When we started this a few years ago, we were serving about 800 to 900 kids. We're now up to about 1,400 kids this past summer of highly regarded program. The proposal in the budget is to continue that K-12 summer learning program through the end of the levy. And of course, last but not least, maintaining post-secondary programs. So we have two really important investments. And again, they are just continuations of services. As we are asked to do, we piloted a program called the Path to UW. It's for our Promise Scholars. And I'll talk a little bit more about our Promise program and just how great it's doing. But the Path to UW has been a magnificent success. We have more than double the enrollment that we anticipated. The scholars who participate in Path to UW, 71% of them go on to four-year, we haven't gotten to completion yet. It's a fairly new program, but they are enrolled in four-year programs at the University of Washington. So it's going gangbusters. I shouldn't say that. Sorry about that. Okay. So, and then the other piece of this is with Seattle Promise. So Seattle Promise, we have both equity enhancements and a very high enrollment in this program. Our enrollment is hitting closer to about 1,400 right now in Seattle Promise. So this pays for both the sort of wraparound equity scholarships as well as the higher than initially anticipated enrollment in the program. So with that said, we're on to questions. That's the end of our presentation.
Well, thank you to you both. I'm going to turn it over to the chair of your committee, vice chair of this committee, Councilmember Rivera.
Thank you, Chair Strauss. And thank you, DEEL, for being here. Full disclosure, Director Chappelle and I have had the pleasure of working together for the last 6 years and with the team at DEEL. So I'm really happy to be continuing to work with this team who've had a lot of work to do with this Families in Education Preschool Promise Levy, the FEP levy. You know, in Washington State, as we all know and have discussed, education is a state responsibility. The city provides supports, though, to kids via this FEP levy every year. As you heard from DEEL, these investments include childcare and preschool for eligible families to get kids kindergarten ready, K through 12 wraparound services to get kids college ready, and I want to underscore the K through 12 investments are not things that Seattle Public Schools is responsible for or on the hook for, but that they are just that to help kids with some supports around that K through 12 piece. And then the Seattle Promise, which is the universal 2 years of free college. And then, as you heard DEEL say, they partner with the UW to have some of these Promise kids go on to get a 4-year degree, which is very exciting. And it was an add-on. It was not part of the original Seattle Promise proposal. But as the program has gotten underway, there have been these great partnerships and pieces, including providing some supports to the Seattle Promise students as well by way of wraparound services to help them complete those 2-year degrees and then to help them transition to UW for those that would like to do that. So it's really been a really great program, and Seattle Promise, as Jonathan said earlier, it's really a program that a lot of kids have availed themselves of. And I think a really important piece to point out is that this particular program is heavily utilized by kids who are from marginalized communities that might not have the opportunity. In theory, it's free to any kid, Seattle Public School kid in the city of Seattle, and we know that the bulk has actually been utilized by those BIPOC kids, and so that brings me a lot of pride and joy to know that those kids have access, and that's really who's utilizing the program. So it was not designed to be that way, and then that's how it's working out because those are the kids that need the help the most, and so that's really great. And I really appreciate all the work DEEL has done in terms of all of these programs, but particularly Promise because that was a newer program to them. And you also know that DEEL's budget is primarily funded through the FEP levy, as Jonathan said earlier. And it's really great to hear, Director Chappelle, that all of your programs will be funded into 25 and 26. And then there's just a small, less than, I think I saw in your budget, less than, but you can confirm, less than 4 million is being backfilled by FEP levy underspend. And every year, DEEL has a certain amount of FEP levy underspend. This is actually common, what we've seen, and so they're able to repurpose it back to those programs. So that's great to see that that small reduction of general fund is really being backfilled by just the overage that has not been utilized by the levy. In 2024, DEEL was tasked, as Jonathan also said, with a new line of business, the mental health services to support students with the PET funding. Again, I want to remind us that the state is also responsible for mental health. Nevertheless, the city has consistently supplemented mental health via its budget, I believe through actually the Human Services Department in general. But this particular funding was for youth, particularly post-pandemic, as we were seeing and we've all talked about when we were talking about or with the Seattle Parks and Rec about the needs of youth post-pandemic related to mental health. And so the mayor has proposed this $19.5 million investment in mental health for 25 and $19.5 million in 26, of which 13.9 is under DEEL's purview, and about the 1.1, as we heard, is in Parks' purview. And then, as you heard, it's DEEL will be doing prevention through an awareness campaign, the intervention, the universal screening, and then the telehealth and in-person providers to kids. So that is the proposal, and it is an important one, and I appreciate all the work that DEEL did with this new investment. It took some time for them to figure out how to implement the investment because this is a new line of business and something they weren't doing, but with the help of public health and the UW and various other mental health providers, they were able to come up with a proposal, which is part of what you see here, and working with the mayor's office and the innovation and performance team at the city. So that is really all great because it's grounded in evidence-based solutions, and so looking forward to 2025 when this is really robustly implemented. And then again, as I said earlier, these investments really are meant to supplement and not supplant the state's responsibility. I'm going to keep saying that because while these investments are robust, we all know, they're not necessarily, there's always more and more need, and we really need to look at the state to help with things that they are actually legislated to be responsible for, to make sure that the city is getting, what they need from the state as well. So I just want to keep underscoring that because we keep asking Seattle locally for more and more from our Seattle residents for this levy and many other and all the other levies that we run. So I want to make sure that I'm going to keep talking about how this state is responsible for these things, and we need to make sure that we're getting our share back from the state to help do some of this stuff. Anyway, that's what I wanted to say, and I actually did not have any questions for DEEL because we work so closely together. I really just wanted to flag some of these things, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Rivera. Colleagues, any questions, comments? I've got some, but is that Councilmember Saka? Take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director Chappelle, for this presentation here. Love the DEEL department and your terrific innovative programs and services that you offer. And yeah, I'm proud that my kids were a part of one of the member programs, preschool providers for the Seattle preschool program. So, I know firsthand some of the great work that you all do. And this year, so up until a few months ago, they were part of that preschool, and which is part of the SPP. But they have, my youngest has since aged out, and so is in kindergarten now. But really important work and really important program. So thank you. Just one question related to childcare, the childcare wait list. So, as I understand it, there's currently still a wait list for the Child Care Assistance Program. And so I'd just be curious to better understand how big is that wait list exactly, and how much funding would be needed to meet the current demand for that program? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councilmember Saka. I'm gonna let Jonathan answer this one.
Yeah, so we moved to a wait list just simply because we did not have enough resources to serve the demand. The wait list grew to about 350 kids a few months after we enlisted that last year. Since then, it's actually shrunk significantly, but not all the way. We're at about 200 to 250 kids. We're actually working through a portion of the wait list. In order to actually serve everybody who is on the wait list, we estimate that it would be somewhere about $1.5 to $2 million per year.
Thank you. No further questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Saka. Anyone else? Otherwise, I'm happy to dive right in. Yep, we do. Councilmember Kettle and Councilmember Hollis.
Thank you, Chair Strauss. Thank you, Director Chappelle, Mr. Swift, and of course, Directors Eater and Noble for persevering there at the table. Really appreciate the work that you're doing. I don't have quite the direct experience that some of my colleagues, but I see it in other ways too. Like this weekend, I was at an event for the Boys and Girls Club of King County, who does fantastic work. And previously, I've been associated with the Southwest Youth and Family Services. Great team there, and it's these kinds of things that really make a difference. So I appreciate it from that perspective. I wanted to say to what Councilmember Rivera was saying, mental health. I support what we're doing, but as she noted, really should have been on the back of years and years of advocating Olympia to be doing it. And so we cannot let them off the hook. We need to keep that press on with OIR, us as a council, us and combined with the county, to ensure that we get that support that we need in terms of education and mental health. It's so important, but I do appreciate the fact that we're augmenting early in terms of that process. So thank you for your work on that. And
thank you.
Regarding, one of the things that we've learned in this new economy, one section regarding post-secondary success. Obviously, I'm a son of a welder, came to America, and then my mom came over as well. And so I kind of grew up in the trades world, and I recognize the value of a four-year degree because basically I'm sitting here. And so I see that, but I also see the need for that diversity of training because not everybody's the same. Something that you learn in these early education pieces in terms of how the kids learn is very different, and what can set somebody for success in the future may not be that four-year degree, but there's opportunities to use other programs. So my question is, the slide said four-year degrees, but is there anything that you're looking at in terms of alternative? And it's for these career paths, as one who lives and owns a home here in Seattle, it could be very lucrative in terms of those kinds of trades, in terms of having as a career.
Yes, thank you, and excuse me for jumping in before you finished. But thank you, Councilmember, for noting that. And that's one thing that we've always been excited about is with the Seattle Promise, is that though we just highlighted how we built out the opportunity for young scholars who aspire to attend a four-year university, as we partner with Seattle Public Schools and Seattle colleges. On the Seattle Promise, we do want to make sure that our young scholars are exposed to the opportunities within the trades that are being offered at the Seattle colleges. So we do work with them hand in hand to make sure that young people have an opportunity to explore the various trades that are being offered up there at the colleges. I don't have the data specifically offhand, but I would be happy to follow up with you to share a little bit more about, since our partnership, the number of young people that have been taking advantages of the those post-secondary certificates within Seattle colleges.
Yeah, I would be interested in that.
Okay,
So
I'll follow up with you with that.
thank you. And along those lines, for my next and last question, is I see the Seattle Promise program and the opportunities that it brings. And I've seen it with my own family, my brother, my nieces or nephews, and the like. Not here in Seattle, but how important that is as a bridge, again, particularly if you're not ready for the 4-year experience and so forth. But I also see it as a great opportunity to bring in that diversity that we need, to bring in those people that have an understanding of our neighborhoods into the police force. And, I see the Seattle Promise program as potentially as a great way to create a pipeline or perhaps a police version of ROTC to into the police academy pipeline, to do that and to do the before the badge program and then to become a police officer. Is that something that could be actualized?
So I'll say that the good thing about our partnership with Seattle Public Schools and Seattle colleges is I think we're pregnant with possibilities, meaning like you just talked about the trades for whether it's HVAC or whatnot. Now you're talking about an opportunity for creating opportunities for young people who are interested in becoming into the law force. And so I'm only saying that we can always explore things to see what's actually possible. So yes, to answer your question, long way of saying yes, there is an opportunity to explore to see what is possible.
I'd like to follow up on that.
Okay.
Don't worry, that won't be a surprise to people upstairs because I've mentioned this before. Thank you.
Thank you,
Chair.
Thank you, Councilmember Kettle. Councilmember Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had a quick comment. Thank you, Director Chappelle, or Dr. Chappelle, Dee Chappelle, and definitely want to give a shout out to Dr. Fajardo. I know you're in the back. It's the most quiet I've ever seen you back there. So I just want to, I'm just playing. And CFO Swift, right? I said that right. I just highlighting the amazing program of the Promise. I know some of my colleagues have said it. I had a chance to meet with Dr. Bradley Lane, the president at Seattle Central, and then the Chancellor, Rosie Raimondo, who gave me some stats about the Promise program that I thought I was just completely blown away by. 2023, they had 2,500 applicants. 60% of Seattle Public High School graduates, that's homegrown talent. 1,400 students were enrolled in that. 60% students of color year over year over year. That is the dopest thing I've ever heard. And if that is definitely a blueprint. I know that has been trying to be emulated across the country and couldn't be more proud of that program that we have as a city and just continuing that. And I know that Councilmember Rivera and you all are going to be working together closely with the levy and all that good stuff. So just wanted to highlight that because that I think is amazing. And then obviously my colleague, as he was talking about the trades, we've always talked about that. And one thing I'm interested in, and you don't have to answer this now, but it's going to be interesting to see how we invest in early childhood education for this Gen Alpha who is right now. They've been born with a cell phone in their hands. All they know is technology. All they know is TV. And how we're going to, adjust to that, and what does that look like, and how we're going to invest in their education. I think I was lucky to be an older millennial and being raised by a grandmother who was from the greatest generation. Colleagues, I think that was they are the greatest generation, right? She was born in 1920, but it's going to be interesting to see how we, really invest in these young kids who all they know is a cell phone. They don't know a book or how to look up stuff and to navigate that. So really interesting to see how we're going to invest that as a city and your department kind of take that on. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you, Councilmember Hollingsworth. You're right. Who's going to teach them how to write checks? Word. It is next to my Elks membership card. Director Dr. Chappelle, I like that, the word phrasing that Councilmember Hollingsworth used. My colleagues, Councilmember Saka and Councilmember Rivera, asked the questions that I was going to ask you. I'm not, in the interest of time, I'm not going to double down. Okay. I will ask you to reflect on a prompt that I'll give you in just a second. And I think you've got a special place in this city where we ask you to do somebody else's responsibility with a dedicated funding source. And I've said this to you in private, and I'll say it to you on the record. I can't have favorites up here. And what I've seen from you is that you are one of the most respectable administrators in our region. And that came from when you were a principal in the school district to coming here. You're always collected and present and see a pathway forward, even if there's barriers in your way. We've asked you to do a lot. When you came to the city, it was the preschool levy and it was the education levy. And we bundled that together and added two-year college. Now you're putting kids on young adults on pathways to four-year educations and career technical education. And award-winning Seattle Channel, if we could put up the PowerPoint, and I'd like to go to the DEEL results page just to reinforce this. And, as I look through the 2019-2024 summary of your work, your general fund has stayed the same, if not taking a little dip. It's hard for me to see some of these numbers. We gave you some Jumpstart Fund with the mental health funding last year. And just look at these numbers. 853 children supported, over 2,000 children served in the preschool program. What I'm going to ask you to expand on is specifically regarding K-12, because that's the state's responsibility. And we're lucky enough here in the city where, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that we are the only city in this state that has a Department of Education. We're the only of the 280 other cities to step up where the state is not doing what they need to be. Can you help me understand from your perspective, having been an administrator in the school district, from being an administrator here, and stepping up in a way that other cities haven't, what more do we need to be doing with K-12? What gaps do you see that our current levy is filling that would otherwise be holes for our youth, because it's a state responsibility, but here we are.
So let me first start by thanking you for the compliments and accolades of our amazing department and the great work that we've done over these past almost a decade, right? I'll start by saying that, yes, to answer your question, we are the only department in the state that's providing this type of robust support for all of our young people here in Seattle. And I'll say as one thing that's reflecting on my mind, I'm taking myself back to being a high school principal, and I'm watching these young people walk into the school building, 14-year-olds running to class, excited to learn. And then I'm also picturing myself on the stage, watching them graduate from high school, right? And when you're on stage, you kind of take that panoramic view and you get a chance to see, some people throwing up their caps saying, hey, Seattle Promise, here I come, or UW, Washington State, wherever you want to go, right here I come. Then you also see others, as Councilmember Kittle recommended, was speaking to, trades, here I come. And one thing to just thinking about it from that visual and answering your question, the support that we're providing right now to our scholars around wraparound support services, making sure that there's year-round programming for them to participate throughout the summer and during the school year, is the right stuff that we're doing right now. And one other thing that I'm thinking about is that I'm just thinking about like one of our providers that I had a chance to go visit. So a moment ago, Superintendent Diaz said how he was the secret boss, undercover boss, right? And I'm just thinking about over the summer, through all of our robust, amazing summer programming, I had an opportunity to visit all of them, but there's one that stands out to me is Empowering Youth and Family Services. And it's just the work that they are providing to all of our young scholars when they walk in there. What I saw was them providing like 21st century skills for young people. I saw them providing college and career readiness activities for those older scholars in their program, but I also saw them supporting families, right? So that's just what I'm thinking about. And that's what I love about working for the city of Seattle and us and all of you up here is that we take the One Seattle approach and we make sure that families have the necessary support they need in order for their young people to thrive. So that's the hope. I hope that picture or that story answers your question.
Yes, and I think as a role that you've served as both a principal, but now here at the city, I mean, I remember my principals. I mean, Eric Benson from Nathan Hale, he made a really big impact on a lot of people's lives.
Thank you.
So thank you for your service to our city.
Yep.
Over to you, Vice Chair, to close us out, and then I'll close out the meeting.
Thank you, Chair. I will say, and Director Chappelle and his team and I have had a lot of conversations about this, but in the K through 12 space, we're not seeing the results that we would like to see. And so that is an area that we will be looking deeper at. There was not the review. I will say that there could have been more robustly to the K through 12 wraparounds, and this is just like whenever the departments have a program, and then they usually hire external consultants to do a review to see how well these programs are working. And in this space, that review happened later, and it wasn't as robust as we would all have liked to, including DEEL, it to be. And so we're going to continue to have the conversation because we are making this huge investment and we're just not seeing the outcomes that we would like to see. So what is missing? And so this is what makes the state not stepping up to its responsibility even more challenging, because we just don't know what is needed to really make the impact here. Despite the fact that we've made this investment. So I will say that I will continue to work with Director Chappelle to get more information and data around that. And then otherwise, I'll just say that, one of the things, and you've said that makes working with Director Chappelle on all of these investments is he was a principal at Rainier Beach High School, and he has that wealth of knowledge that he brings to the work on what the kids need, particularly in the BIPOC community. And that is really important to have someone that understands and has worked one-on-one with the kids to know what they need. And so I'm very appreciative of that. Dr. Chappelle, I'm glad you're with us. And then like I said, I just look forward to working with DEEL as we move forward here into the next biennium on what changes we can make to really have the robust outcomes that we all want for our kids in Seattle.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you all.
Very well said. We are now moving towards adjournment of our second day of department presentations regarding the 2025 budget here. Thank you all for coming down today. And tomorrow, we're going to start public safety. Councilmember Kettle will tell you every meeting is a public safety meeting, and tomorrow it is true. We've got the Care Department and SPD in the morning and Human Services Department in the afternoon. Human Services Department does quite a bit. On October 2nd, we'll have Office of Housing and the Seattle Fire Department in the morning. We're reserving the afternoon for overflow in case it occurs, or we'll give you some time back in your day. Remember also by the end of October 22nd to start having your priorities that you would like central staff to address during their presentations, not next week, the week after. That will be helpful for them. Again, thank you to my father. You've raised me well enough to be here before all of you. Happy birthday. Again, it's Babe Ruth hitting 60 home runs in 154 game series, and the only, maybe not the only person, but one of my favorite players to play for both the Yankees and the Mets is one Mr. Yogi Berra. So hopefully the Mets pull out well in their doubleheader today. And I'll just quote Yogi Berra in saying, since we'll be here back tomorrow, 9:30 a.m., it's deja vu all over again. I'll see you at 9:30. We have reached the end of today's meeting. This next Select Budget Committee is Tuesday, October 1st at 9:30 a.m. We will be receiving written public comment. The next verbal public comment will be October 16th. If there's no further business to come before the Budget Committee, we will be adjourned. Hearing no further business, we are adjourned. Thank you all. Thank you. Let's go Hawks.